Welcome back to the AI Ripple Effect podcast, everybody. Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by Stephen Wilson, who is the Director of National Sales at Apex Companies. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Adrian. Really appreciate it.
It's great to have you on board. We're really looking forward to getting stuck into having a conversation. So why don't we start by, Stephen, you giving us a little bit about your background and your journey to where you are today at Apex, and also a little bit about what Apex companies do and who your typical customers are.
Sure. Everyone hears the title sales behind my name, but my journey is probably a lot different than most. I started out unloading trucks for a large retailer out of high school and thought my path was going to work retail. So that's what I went to school for. I went to school for business management, ended up following more of an HR path, got my MBA in leadership and organizational change management. And then my journey, my expectation, I was going to stay working in high volume retail. Then I went to the distribution side and I started running different segments of operations for a large apparel company based out of Baltimore. I worked there for about 13 years in a couple different roles. I helped open up a few facilities for them and then transitioned from actually leading warehouse operation teams to more of an IT role, more of a support role. I helped do system integration testing, whether it be WCS, WMS, or ES, go lives, some basic configurations inside the software, what have you, and then a lot of process improvement. And that really just came out of the nature of the business. And then, like I said, I was with that company for about 13 years. And at that point, I decided I really enjoy what I'm doing. I was loving that aspect of life, but I felt I was kind of pigeonholed because I was only seeing that company and that operation, and I wasn't seeing everything else that was possible out there. So I went to work for an integrator out of Dallas. I worked for them managing the software solutions team. I helped do our ASRS deployments. I helped design some of the software to run it. I did system implementation, testing, all that kind of good stuff. And then after a couple of years of that, the ownership came to me and asked me about going on to the sales side. And I told them they were out of their mind. That's not something I would ever do. I don't like salespeople. And they said, well, you are a salesperson. I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. They said, well, everyone asks you to get on the calls and talk to the clients because you understand the operation, you understand the technology, and you can have the intelligent conversations with them. You're not just going to nod your head up and down and say, oh yeah, we can absolutely do that. You're going to tell them what you can do, what you can't do, why it would work, why it won't work. And your goal is honestly helping the operation and coming up with solutions, not just making a buck. All right, good point. So I was like, I'll try it. So I tried it and found some good early success. I was with them for about 5 years in total. And then I came over to Apex Companies almost 3 months ago now. And it's definitely a little bit of a change. Apex is an integrator as well. They actually started out doing rack audits years and years ago, then moved into installing racking, selling forklifts, and then doing automation as well. I was brought on board to help lead a sales team along with some other directors. We work in parallel with each other, but it's me helping to really grow the automation side, leveraging my background and my expertise from being an end user, from being the boots on the ground, and from working on the IT side a little. But Apex is a growing company. They are all over the U.S. They're in Canada as well. We've got offices in Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, Denver, Colorado, and our main headquarters is in Chicago, Illinois, along with a few warehouses near those sites to store racking for speed of sale.
That sounds like you have a broad breadth of customers out there and a broad breadth of services that you provide at Apex. Really interesting. And with that breadth of exposure you have, what are the key trends that you're seeing in the marketplace and logistics at the moment? So, anything from labor market pressures, cost pressures, risks. What are the key things you're seeing?
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Everyone is looking and having conversations around AI, around automation, and what they can do to improve their operation. But on the other end, a lot of that equipment is coming in from overseas and they're all battling the tariffs as well. It's really a big question mark out there. Do we automate now knowing the tariffs are there? Do we try to weigh it out a little bit, but struggle with the labor side? Because the labor isn't just a cost, it's also the availability of people. One of the challenges I'm seeing in certain states, there's certain states where, marijuana is legal, which fine. You know, I'm not judging. That's fine. That's great. But that's at the state level. At the federal level, it's not. So a lot of these companies employing forklift operators, those operators aren't there. If they have an incident or whatever, they're still liable to lose their job and their employment if an accident happens. So there's not that demand for forklift operators is a lot higher, and the availability of people to perform those roles is a lot lower.
Right. Right. Interesting. And you talk about automation. Is that in the sort of context of robotics in a warehouse setting? Is that operational automation from a cost line item on a balance sheet? Where do you see most of that?
Yeah, I see it in the infrastructure within the facilities. It is robotics to an extent, but automation isn't necessarily just robotics. It's adding conveyors as well. It's adding logic inside the WMS software or the controls layer. There's a whole bunch of different types of automation, but I will say that the stereotypical warehouse individual thinks automation and immediately goes down the rabbit hole of robots.
Yeah. And on the uncertainty that you're seeing, you mentioned, do we automate? Do we wait? Depending on where the tariffs land, is that translating into, or is that driven mostly by the fear of cost and not knowing what the future's going to hold, or is there some other thing driving that? Do you think?
I think it's that sticker shock, that upfront cost. It's not back in the day purchasing. I say back in the day, but even today, purchasing racking is very simplistic. Purchasing a forklift, you know what that cost is, you know what you're getting. It's the same forklift that it was 20 years ago. Maybe upgrade a little bit, but the same equipment. Now people are looking at automation, but it's not something that they really know. It's not like I bought that robot before. I know exactly what I'm getting. No, you have to trust that the person providing that to you is actually providing you the best solution. I got asked a question. I was on the job hunt and I was interviewing at a lot of different companies, and some of them were OEMs, right? They were the actual robot manufacturers, rack manufacturers, whoever. But I had no interest in working at those companies, and it wasn't anything against those companies. But I related to a car salesman. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I don't mean that in a negative way. But if my job is to sell cars, right, that means I go to a Ford dealership. So if you come to me looking for a truck, you know what the best truck in the market is? It's absolutely a Ford truck. And then 5 years from now, I'm working at a Chevy dealership. If you come to me in 5 years, say, hey, what's the best truck on the market? Hands down, it's always been a Chevy. I'm selling a widget. I don't want to sell a widget. I want to provide a solution, and I want to be able to come to the table with all the different widgets. I want to say, hey, here's a Ford, here's a Chevy, here's a Dodge, here's the pros and cons of this, pros and cons of that, pros and cons of this. Let's look at all these and let's work together to figure out what works best for your operation. I enjoy doing that. I don't want to sit there and just have my name tied to a specific brand, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. And you touch upon the automation and the great work you guys are doing already in that space. And obviously, robotic process automation has been around for a while, and there's been robotics. And there's a bit of a gray area crossover between automation and artificial intelligence. But obviously, the two things are distinct pretty much. I mean, they do operate together. But with the advent of large language models and the modern era of AI, what's your take on AI in logistics, Dean?
The first thing I'll say is, I have this conversation frequently. In my experience and what I see, it's not truly AI. It's labeled as AI, but to me, it's machine learning. It's taking inputs from historical data and making decisions based on the historical data that's inputted into the software through your APIs or data transfers, whatever. The output is based on the algorithms looking at that historical data. It's only going to be able to adjust on the fly to exceptions if there's rules programmed into the algorithms to say, hey, if this happens based on X, Y, Z, and A, B, C, and E, then do this. But that's all got to be programmed. But to me, it's machine learning more than it is AI. I do think AI exists. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I think when you look at AI, to me, I think ChatGPT. It looks at everything that's on the internet. It looks at all the inputs from all the papers, all the feeds, and then it looks at the validity of all those based on reviews and content, this and the other, and then spits out whatever it is you're asking them to spit out based on all that. I do think there's some intelligence behind there. I would call that intelligence. I think what we see in warehousing and manufacturing is more machine learning based on based on historical data.
Right. No, that's a great point. And that machine learning use case and implementation, that's having a positive impact. Are you guys using it yourselves? Are you seeing the benefits?
Yes, I look at it specifically when I look at SKU velocity. When you look at big robotic systems, let's take one of the partners that I've worked with for years is Quicktron Robotics, and they have a solution out there that they call QuickBin. And it's and Geek Plus has something similar, so does High Robotics. It's tote storage, and it's picking totes to robots to go to pack stations for users to pick stuff out of. But what the software does, and all those platforms do it as well. It's not unique to Quicktron. I just happen to like them the most. What it's doing is it's looking at ABC velocity. It's looking at that history, and it's reslotting inventory on its own based on the velocity of the SKUs inside the tote. So that way it gets closer to the picker. And that adds speed. That speed decreases the need for robots and increases the efficiency for the packers at the station.
Got it. Interesting. So on your journey through, you've only joined Apex recently, but it'd be interesting to hear prior to that, to where you are today, what have been the big hurdles that you've encountered in your journey and how have you overcome those?
I would say the biggest journey is a lack of knowledge and, some stereotypical thoughts out there in the marketplace. A lot of people hear robotics and then they go to these trade shows. They go to Modex, they go to ProMat. It's information overload. People get hung up on, I want this. Well, why do you want that? Because I saw it at ProMat. It's really cool. It does it. That's great. You saw it at ProMat. I go back a couple years. They had the humanoid robot that was moving a tote. I had a client ask me about that and, what it looks like to integrate that to their system. What they were doing was displaying where the technology is leading us to, not where we're at right now. That's not where we're at. But people get these ideas. They see these big shiny things and, oh, we want this in our warehouse. Well, the ROI is like 30 some years. The maintenance is unknown and you would be an R&D project. It's not going to prove out. Let's stick with, and it's the education. And that's what I found my role has become on the sales side and on the solution side is not selling them what they're asking for, but educating. And then if that's what you want, right, and that's how you want it, I'm absolutely going to help you. But at the same time, I'm doing you a disservice if I don't educate you on everything that's out there, the pros, the cons, and all that. So I've kind of found that the hurdle is really getting past those initial thoughts of either automation is too scary and I don't want to do it, or my God, I want everything because that's the coolest thing in the world. And trying to just bridge that and then find the middle ground that, hey, let's just look at your warehouse. Let's look at your operation. Let's look at your manufacturing facility. Let's flow it out. Let's look at the bottlenecks and let's address those bottlenecks. Let's get through that point. And then let's see what makes sense based on your business model.
Makes a lot of sense. Digestible chunks, not taking on the whole in the ocean. Brilliant. And with that experience and the lessons you've learned to date, hypothetically, if you had a time machine and were able to go back, say 12 months or so, would there be one thing you would change, Stephen?
No, because I'm a firm believer in the butterfly effect. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. All the struggles and difficulties I've had, over my entire life have led me to where I'm at. I feel that when clients talk to me, they trust me. They know that I've got their best interest. I don't always have the right answer. I may think I've got the right answer. I've done all the research and it proves not to be. But it's not out of malice. It's not out of anything other than I learned something that I wasn't aware of that led me to this. And I think I've got a great relationship with all of my folks. I don't even like calling them clients because I feel like we're on a different level than just, sales guy client relationship. I think all those struggles, as much as I'd love to say, oh God, if I could go back in time, I would change all this. I don't know that I would because I feel like I've learned so much. The one thing that's really cool about Apex, I was telling one of our owners this last night. He asked me, hey, you've been here for a couple months now. What's the good, bad, and the ugly? I say the one thing that I'll tell you is the sales team is unlike anything I've ever seen before. He says, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't look at any of them and think they're sales guys. I mean, and I worked in sales at another integrator, and then I was an end user and had salespeople talking to me, this, that, and the other. And I had this impression of the typical sales guy. And I don't feel like I ever fell into that mold based on my journey, but I felt like almost everyone else kind of did. And at Apex, I'm like, none of them do. The process is you get into sales by working your way up through engineering and project management. So the people in sales were the guys that were the boots on the ground or the girls that were boots on the ground running projects, dealing with the multiple vendors, having the conversations with the clients. And I think that's really proven to be a good formula for grooming and developing good solution providers. And I'll say that as opposed to salespeople, because everyone I meet and talk to, they're genuinely not concerned, but just focused on solving a problem.
Awesome. Great answer. Obviously, that's the retrospective view, but looking forward and what is on the horizon for Apex companies from a growth perspective, product wise, what are the key milestones, Stephen, that looking forward are going to be coming up?
Yeah, we really cut our teeth on rack repair, rack audits, and providing racking and forklifts in the industry. Been a very big successful company doing that, and are now really gearing up on the automation side when it comes to conveyors and robotics and things like that. I think that's the next big milestone for us is Apex companies not just being known as the rack provider or the forklift provider, but we're the automation integrator. We are the one source for all of that and really taking over a lot of the market share on the automation side, on the robotics side, and material handling. It's just a natural progression in the journey. But what's been really nice is Apex over its years has been very methodical and very deliberate in its decisions, in its path. And I think that's going to prove us really well, especially as we grow our automation side, because a lot of the integrators out there, they try to do everything. And you're not going to be good at everything if you don't focus on something. Our path is going to be focusing on those small to medium sized jobs and really nailing those and learning those and then growing and scaling appropriately over time to get us to the point where we are the only name that you think of in the industry when it comes to automation integration.
Fantastic. Sounds like an exciting period for you guys. And for anybody out there, Stephen, listening and watching who wants to find out more about Apex companies and the services you provide, where can they get more information?
So if you check out our website, I encourage everyone to check out the website. It's not just a marketing campaign to show who we are, but there is so much information there. Whether you're looking at ASRS pallet shuttles, you want to know about stick rack, you want to know about Lindy forklifts or whatever. There's so much documentation on there just to learn. I encourage anyone to look at, but if you go to www.apex, it'll take you to our landing page. And from there, you can navigate through all of our different business units, our literature that's out there, and be able to contact any of us at any time.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure that we include all of those links in the description of the podcast when it goes out so people can find out much more about Apex companies at their own leisure. But thank you, Stephen, for your insights and your background. It's been fascinating to have you on the podcast. Thanks to everybody out there for watching and listening again. We will see you on the next episode of the AI Ripple Effect podcast. For now, Stephen at Apex Companies, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate for having me, Adrian.